Welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa Caprio. Do you believe in magic? What if you were told that all you had to do was get a little creative and work a magic spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Here on Postcards to the Universe, we will share manifesting, tips, postcards, creativity, abundance, and prosperity. Here is your host, Melissa Caprio.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Postcards to the Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave. How are you guys doing? It's Wednesday. I hope everybody is doing well. Today, I have really interesting guest. I'm excited to speak with her today. Storyteller, mythologist, and she's also an author, Allison Stieger. And we're going to talk. She's got an upcoming book, Unstuck: Finding and Following Your Path Through the Heroic Journey. And we're going to talk about a little bit about that and some of her courses and the things she's teaching us through mythology, which has always been interesting to me. So I'm excited to find out more. And she's going to join me here in just a couple of minutes. To my regulars, thank you so much for joining me each week. It means a lot to me. And I get your emails and your comments, and I appreciate it that you're enjoying the show. If you're new to the show, I want to say welcome. Just so you know that every show is uploaded on all the podcasting platforms, and there's always a description of who is my guest on the show and what the show is going to be about. And you can also catch every show on Om Times Radio in the archives section. And I also put every show on my website, postcardstotheuniverse.com, and it's under podcast. And like I said, there's always a description, so if something catches your interest and you want to check it out, please do. Or you can, like I said, subscribe on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. Just a little bit about me. I'm an author, I'm a photographer. I have a book titled Postcards to the Universe: Harness the Universe's Power and Manifest Your Dreams. And I talk all about manifesting, consciously co creating with the universe. And I have people create manifesting postcards, which is kind of like a mini vision board, and then they send them to me. I photograph them, and then I share their story when their manifestation shows up in their reality. And I'm always asking each week for people to send me a manifesting postcard. They're really fun to do, to tap into that creative energy, which is very powerful. And if you want help with that, or if you need to know the address, or you have questions, just go to postcardstotheuniverse.com. I have a little section that tells you how to create one, how to set your space, the address where to send it, and of course my email if you want to ask me anything. And I really do enjoy getting them. And I think collectively we need to be co-creating for a kinder earth for all of us here right now. So let's put our intention there. Okay, let's talk to Allison, because I have a feeling she's going to be sharing some really interesting things about these mythological stories that we've heard from our childhood or from school, and how we can use some of those to deal with some of the things that are happening today. So let me just give you a little info on Allison. So Allison Stieger is an acclaimed expert on the topic of mythology, storytelling, and personal transformation through narrative shaping. She holds a master's degree in mythological studies from Pacifica Graduate Institute and has more than 20 years of experience at Mythic Stories, working with individuals of all ages and from all walks of life on crafting the narrative structure of their lives using powerful life changing lessons from myths the world over. She has learned firsthand what the power of myth can do in the guidance of a human life, and her passion and mission is in sharing these loving and ancient gifts from our ancestors that are designed to show us how to navigate our lives successfully through their examples. Allison's warm and welcoming demeanor creates a safe space for her clients and students to walk through and be transformed by some of the most challenging moments in their lives. She is renowned for her ability to guide and mentor those who work with her. Her upcoming book, Unstuck: Finding and Following Your Path Through the Heroic Journey, will bring mentorship to a wider audience, and she is deeply committed to ensuring that every human who finds themselves lost along the way has the guideposts they need to find their way through. And if you want to find out more about Allison, go to her website. There's tons of information on her website. It's mythicstories.com. That's mythic, MYTHIC, stories, STORIES.com. Welcome, Allison. Thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to talk about this. I've always I remember being in high school and studying some of these stories, and they've always fascinated me. How did you get into this kind of work? Like, what inspired it? Did you see a story and it resonated with your own life, and then you said, "I need to delve deeper into this"? Like, how does that happen for you?
Well, it was so interesting because I had, looking back now, a much more mythic childhood than I really realized at the time. My
Mm,
dad moved our family from California to Alaska so he could be a bush pilot when I was a year old. And I ended up in this very powerful landscape. It was almost like something out of Lord of the Rings or something with these enormous mountains and being around bears and mountain goats and, all these crazy adventures that we had when I was growing up. And my dad was this fantastic storyteller, and my mom was this inveterate reader who just kind of gave me this love for the written word. So I was kind of constantly being buffeted by strands of story in every aspect of my life. And then they went through this basically mythic divorce when I was 5, and stories were the
mm.
thing that got me through that. I mean, it was really terrible. They both kidnapped my brother and me. It was
Oh
terrible.
my
But
God.
the stories
Wow.
were the thing that saved me, right? It was a place that I could go. I could read, I could be in books, and I could kind of find myself into another person's narrative or another place and another person's imagination. And it gave me a little bit of a respite. And I think that anybody who's ever read a really good book, which I hope is most of us,
Mhm.
really knows what that feels like, right? This can be a thing that saves us or teaches us what we need to
Yes.
know. So I had all of these wonderful friends on the page, and that it was just always such a comfort for me. But then I got older and I started studying more widely, studying psychology, anthropology, religion, and I was just trying to figure out my own life. Like I got out of college and I was absolutely aimless. I had no idea what to do with myself. I kind of had this sense that there were certain things I was supposed to want, like, finding a partner, getting a career, or a house, having kids, like this very vague sense that these were things that were expected of me. And I did kind of want them vaguely, but I didn't know what I was doing, like a lot of people in their 20s. And
Right.
stories were the thing that I always knew to turn to, and it was coming to an understanding of what are really sacred texts had to offer to me, because I would read them and they were exciting and they were thrilling and they were romantic and hilarious and they were, scary, and all these things were happening. But what they were also doing, I started to figure out, is they were showing me how people that came on the planet before me navigated some of these moments that we all face in our lives. And I got a little bit older and I discovered the work of this guy named Joseph Campbell, which led me to Carl Jung's work and a lot of other thinkers around this. And it showed me that all of these strands of things that I had been studying that I found really important, like how do we seek meaning in our lives? How do we figure out how to navigate the hardest moments in our lives? What tools do we have to help us? And it was all there in these stories. And, we know this to be true too, right? If you want to communicate
Mhm.
something to a human being, the best thing that you can do is tell them a story. That is the most powerful communicative tool that we have. If you make it interesting, if you give it a compelling narrative, that's how you get the information into somebody else's head. So this is what
True.
we've been doing for millennia, right? We
Mhm.
have something that somebody that lived before figured out, or maybe they want to be a cautionary tale and they say, really don't do it like this. We did it and it was a disaster. They will share that on in a story. And the most powerful of those stories are the ones that we now know as myths, right? They are the ones that lasted
Mhm.
because they had such a deep resonance for the human imagination and the human psyche. But we all study them when we're like 11. Maybe we read,
Mhm.
maybe if it really captures our imagination, maybe we'll read extra. A lot of kids, I've taught kids of this age. There are some kids that just really get caught at around like 8 to 13 with this idea of
Yeah.
what myths are. And that's exactly the age where you're starting to sort of separate psychologically from your parents and your family, and you start to think of yourself as an individual person. And those stories have a lot of appeal to us because they're showing us what to do. And what I find so powerful about them is, we talk so much about generational trauma and the things that come down to us through our families that are hard and that we have to overcome, but we have so much more than that. We have these beautiful examples told in the form of a story where they say, okay, we figured out something really, really cool, and we're so excited about what we learned that we really want to pass that on to you and give you this gift of knowledge and wisdom that we've gained through our experiences. So we're going to tell you this fantastic story, and it's going to have monsters and romance and jokes and all this cool stuff, but it's also going to show you what to do. And if you pay attention, excuse me, which we don't, because we kind of abandon this when we maybe get to age 14 or whatever, that will teach
Yeah.
you what to do. And I learned that if I read the myths with the right kind of an eye, I could figure out everything in my life. And my childhood was challenging in a lot of ways, and I was really aimless. And I was able to create an amazing life for myself, one that I never thought that I would ever have in a million years. And myths were what showed me how to do that. So now I get to have the privilege of taking everything that I've learned and sharing that on with other people that are figuring out for themselves.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Mm.
stories and reading has saved me too. Actually, in the
Yeah.
hardest times of my lives, I get lost in books, and I always tell everybody that that saved me. Books saved me at the
Well,
worst
if you
times
think
of
of,
my life.
yeah,
And yeah.
think about what a
Mhm.
book is, right? Or any other piece of
Mhm.
art.
Right.
Somebody sat down and they were scared and they didn't think they might be any good, but they wrote it anyway. And they created an artifact that they left behind that now can bring comfort and succor to somebody else or teach them what they need to know.
Absolutely.
Like if they didn't have the courage to go through that, this is what I call the heroic journey, right? To say, okay, I have this idea and I want to share it. I have this impulse to want to share it on. I'm going to paint it or I'm
Mhm.
going to, dance it or I'm going to write it or I'm going to do whatever and I'm going to leave this behind and it's going to bring something that somebody else needs. And we are all the product of every bit of that we've ever read. Like any book you've ever read, any piece of art that has ever really
Mhm.
moved you, these amazing conversations that sometimes we have with people, these are all gifts from the ancestors. And what I love to talk
Absolutely.
about with this work, this is what Unstuck is about, is to say, okay, you know what? You have all the help you need to figure out how to get through the most difficult moments of your life. And if you are lucky, what you get to do is be transformed by what you've gone through, and now you have something to offer somebody else. So we go through this process where we start off on this heroic journey and we are the hero, but as we grow through that, now we have something to offer back to the community. To me, it's the most sacred duty that any human can aspire to is to say, okay, I'm going to take this trauma and this terrible thing that's happening to me. It could be a diagnosis or a divorce or just any really hard thing where you change from one state of being to another. You're not the person you were before. And now you have something that you've learned from that that's going to be able to help somebody else down the road. And you don't have to write the great
Mhm.
American novel or do anything. It could be a conversation with somebody else at a bus stop. You never know
Sure.
when you're providing comfort or providing that thing that that other person needs desperately. We affect each other in these ways all the time. And this is the power of what myths show us how to do, right? If we can understand how to navigate this, how to shift our perception about our own stories so that we can do that, this is what the myths have been teaching us how to do for millennia. And this is the real power of this work.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I wanted to ask about because I think like you said something like when you were in your 20s, you're walking around
Mm.
aimless. I think a lot of us are,
Yeah.
not many of us know what we're going to do from childhood and then we just
Hmm.
fall into it. Most of us are
Yeah.
wandering aimlessly. We don't understand, who we are, our place in the world, our own identity. And you talk about the archetypes and identity
Hmm.
and finding ourselves through these, these stories and these
Hmm.
mythological characters. Can you share a little bit about that in a little bit more detail for everybody who's listening right now?
Yeah, of course. Well, okay. So we all come to a time in our life when we don't know what's coming next, right?
Right.
And
Mhm.
we have ideas of what it is that we might want to seek. And I'm running into that myself now. I have two teenage sons, and I've been in this mom role for so long, and now my son's going to college in the fall, and I have
Mhm.
to find a almost like a new identity for myself. It changes, and it's not that my relationship with them ends, but they don't need me the way that they used to 10 years
Of
ago.
course.
So
Right.
now I have to recognize that that active part of my life that I love so much is changing, and I have to find a new path forward. But the beauty of it is it's all in the myths, and it's actually all in the archetypes. And I'm glad that you said that word because part of the work that I'm doing here is to talk about how archetypes influence us. I think it's much broader than we've ever really understood before because what we
Mhm.
often do is we see each other as archetypes instead of as human beings because it's so much
Yes.
easier to do it that way, right? Like I'm going to see you as the role that you fill in my life or
Mhm.
we see other people that way, right? So you're my mom, or you're my child, or you're my friend, or you're my enemy, or whatever you are, because it takes a lot of energy to really see another human being deeply, right? And we don't really want to commit to
Sure.
that a lot of the time. So we just say, okay, well, you're whatever noun that I've decided that you are. And so we
Mhm.
have this archetypal energy that we sort of inhabit and that other people inhabit as well. And once we start to understand that, the ways in which we hold archetypal energy, then we can
Mhm.
start to navigate, well, okay, yes, you're my 6-year-old child. I am the mother archetype. And that's really sometimes what a child sees. They only see the mother archetype. They don't see the flawed and vulnerable human being on the
Sure.
inside of that. All they see is the archetype. And this really helped me
Mhm.
figuring this out as I was parenting teenagers as they were going through puberty and whatever. Sometimes that's all they see is the archetype. Sometimes they see me. And once I started to
Mhm.
be able to recognize when that was changing, and it shifts constantly, then I could be there for them in different ways, right? And I think that this happens a lot. So, if you're dating, say, and you meet somebody and the person says, you remind me so much of my ex, the odds
Mhm.
are is you're going to be treated like whatever archetype that person was holding for them. Right?
Right.
So if you
Right.
recognize that, like, I know a lot of women and, maybe men too, but, I see this a lot. Like, they're seen as caregivers only, or you don't want to be the mom
Mhm.
for someone, right? And it's really a compelling. Everybody wants to be cared for, but it's kind of a slip backwards into the child archetype to say you just take care of everything, and I'm just gonna, I don't want to do anything. I'm gonna put that on you. Well, if you have the archetype language to navigate this, you can say, well, I can be this for you sometimes, or I can be this for you never, or knowing what it is, what space you're holding for another person allows you to start to
Mhm.
have those conversations about, okay, you see me as this, or I feel like I am this for you, or you are this for me, or whatever, then now we can say, okay, I need you to actually really see me, and I need you to step into your own archetypal energy in that way. Because sometimes if we hold onto the archetype too much, then we
Mhm.
contain, that contains, and archetypes have a lot of power, right? So if you
Yes.
hold onto it too much, then if you just really want to be the mother archetype and you will not let your child out of the child archetype, even though they're 35 years old or whatever, then you are
Yeah.
being unwilling to cede the power of the archetype to that person. So if you have someone in your life that needs to step up into a role, you have to be willing to let go of the power of what you've been holding and give it over to them for the benefit of their growth into their own individuation or whatever. So recognizing how we hold archetypal energy and when we need
Mhm.
to let it go and when we need to grab onto it is a really, really useful tool when people are behaving in ways that don't make sense. And sometimes it's
Right.
when we behave in ways that don't make sense, because if you look at it this way, if someone's like doing something that doesn't make sense to you, if you understand the archetype that they're operating under, then it starts to
Mhm.
become clear. And
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 we
what
all
I've
see
noticed,
it, right? We
oh
all see
well,
it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, like how many people have, we see it on a global scale. We see it in our own lives. Like, how many people do you
yeah,
know that have the martyr archetype, right? Or
right, yeah,
the victim
yeah.
archetype. We see that
Hmm.
really big on the global scale. So,
Yes.
yeah, so share a little bit as you're getting into this more about what are the classic archetypes that sort of we all come across, or maybe we're being ourselves, that people
Yeah.
don't even realize that it's considered an archetype. And I learned about archetypes got very in depth through Carolyn Mace, because she
Mm-hmm.
wrote a whole book about it, and then I really kind of understood them, and I started to see
Yeah.
myself, and I started to see people I know, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. You learn things about yourself by
Yeah, you
by
really
by
do.
following these stories. Okay, go ahead. So I want to hear
Well,
more about
what
the
yeah, so and
archetypes.
I appreciate you bringing up Carolyn Mace, because I started to, I started the work with archetypes in grad school studying Carl Jung's work. He was
Mhm.
kind of the originator of that. But the way that she talks about it that I really appreciated is that she identifies that each archetype has both a light and a shadow aspect, right? So
Mhm.
anything, you can be an archetype in any way, but recognizing whether you're in the light side of it or the shadow side gives you another piece of important information about it, right? So, and she identifies, like, there's four, she considers them four survival archetypes. And I
Mhm.
think that makes sense in a way, but it can be a little bit limiting in my opinion.
Sure.
We all
Mhm.
recognize that we have been in the child archetype because we've all been children just by definition, right? So
Right.
how is that affecting you? I mean, it's going to be with you. The inner child that you were is something that you're going to have to be grappling with your entire life, probably. There are going to be times that you fall back into the child archetype without even realizing it. But once you have the
Sure.
tools to recognize it, you can say, okay, I do not need to be operating as my inner 5-year-old that was hurt by my mother or whatever.
Right.
I need to step into a place of greater power. I need to step out of that victim archetype. And just
Mhm.
recognizing that sometimes it can be a really powerful and good thing, and sometimes it can be a really negative and damaging thing. And
Sure.
knowing when you're shifting, and it's an energy that shifts so quickly, and recognizing how it does that and how it moves is really powerful. So the number one archetype that I usually bring up with people is one that I call the mirror.
Mhm.
Jung described it as the anima or the animus, and it's
Okay.
basically
Mhm.
how we see other people reflecting ourselves back to ourselves.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
so what we do is we're going to project whatever it is that we need from that person onto them, and how
Mhm.
interested we are in them. Like if you're dating or even just in a friendship or something, you are going to be looking for something from the people that you meet. And how
Right.
well they reflect back what you're looking for without even really realizing it is going to determine how attracted you are to them as a friend or as a partner or whatever. So when we find someone that we really like, usually it's because there's something about them that shows us ourselves back in a way that we find really interesting or exciting. So once we
Right.
know that about ourselves, right, we can say, okay, I see, like, I'm attracted to you. I want to be your friend or whatever. You're interesting. There's something about them that you are seeing a part of yourself coming back to you. So I call it the mirror archetype, and it's because it does that. So if you know
Yeah.
how a two-way mirror works, right? A two-way mirror, if there's a light on, you only see yourself, or sorry, if you only see yourself, but then if a light comes on behind the mirror, then you're able to see the person behind it. And that's
Right.
when you're actually starting to develop a real relationship with them. You start to see who they are on the other side of that mirror. So that to me is the number one archetype that I think I want more people to understand. And then the other
Mhm.
one is I think that everybody needs to wrestle with are the mother, the father, and the child, because
Okay.
the mother and the father and the child are very, very powerful core archetypes that, and it doesn't even really matter what your relationship with your human mother or your human father are really like. I mean, you can have maybe you had a good one, maybe you had a bad one, maybe whatever your relationship was, the concept of what the mother is and what the father is in an archetypal way really does influence how we behave and what expectations we have of other people a lot more than we realize, right? There are
Mhm.
things that we need from those archetypes pretty regularly, and we're going to be seeking that in other people, and other people are going to be seeking that in us. So, how we navigate the movement of energy between mother, father, and child all the time is, I think, a really key aspect of understanding archetypes. So, once we see that, I hear this so much from women now. It's like, oh, he just wants me to be his mother. Well, yes, that is probably true.
Mhm.
What is if you feel that way, then you now have an opportunity to have a conversation with your partner to say, okay, you are putting too much of that on me. We need you to find your own mother archetype. We need you to find the power of that caregiving aspect that you're looking for, and start to navigate the transfer of that power a little bit. So I would say, like, I mean, just I could go on about this for a really long time,
I'm
obviously,
sure.
but I
Right.
think these are some of the first things that we need to start understanding. And you mentioned victim archetype or martyr, or sometimes
Mhm.
we see like people that are advocates, or they're really passionate about, like, fomenting change in the world, or maybe they're just the person that wants to, like, be home by the fire and keep that as a safe space and a wonderful space. There's a lot of ways that we see people showing up, and
Mhm.
understanding not only which ones kind of dominate for you, but also how that's shifting around you. And I do think that there's a lot of benefit in looking at celebrity culture, because
Mhm.
archetypes are really heavy on celebrities, right? They hold a
Sure.
lot of it for the culture. So if you're a fan or a foe of Donald Trump, you have any kind
Mhm.
of strong feeling about this man, it's because
Right.
he's triggering archetypal energy for you, okay?
Mm.
And anybody, like, it could be anybody,
Yeah.
any favorite, like, people love Taylor
Right.
Swift or Beyonce or whatever. Like, if you really, like, I went to a Taylor Swift show with my son like a year and a half ago, and it was
Yeah.
fascinating because
Yeah.
people are
They're
crying,
they're
fainting.
Swifties. Yes, they're
Like,
very
what the? I mean,
serious. Yes.
this is much
That's
more than
interesting.
just like I like this pop
Yeah.
star's music. This is a religious experience essentially, and that's happening
Yes.
because she's holding an archetype.
Type.
Now
What
she's a
archetype do
person.
you think she's holding, just from your
Okay,
experience?
yeah. So I actually think that she's holding something that's very similar to the Greek goddess Artemis. And once you start to
Okay.
look at her under this kind of aegis, if you will, you start to see it,
Mhm.
because Artemis was the goddess of young girls and the protector of young girls. And what she's done in
Mm.
her career is create this space that's not hypersexualized. It's not leading
Right.
with sexuality. It's about being
Mhm.
a space that young girls can really feel like free in themselves. And that was what I saw. And once you start to look at it, there is so much Archer imagery all over her music. Like, she's pulling the arrow on stage. She's got a song called The Archer. She's a
Yeah.
Sagittarius. I mean, it's just like over and over and over again, this image of the bow and the arrow is coming up here. Now, we don't
Oh
see
my
that
God, I
often.
love that so much.
Yeah,
Cause I'm not like a hardcore, but there's something about her that I do. I just adore her. There's something
yeah.
about her energy, and now it's even deeper. But I have to ask because we're gonna have to take a break in a minute. What is Donald Trump's archetype? Just
I
because
believe that
he's
Donald Trump is the trickster. Now, the trickster
oh,
is a creature that exists in mythology to smash existing forms of culture and
yes,
calcified forms of power. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's taking a sledgehammer to the federal government, and
yes.
that's what tricksters do. So,
That's
this
funny
is,
that you say that because I'm learning a little bit more about tarot and in the astrology,
mm,
and I'm seeing how all of these merge together, and the trickster
hmm,
comes up a lot for him
yeah,
under the tarot. So that's super interesting. We're going to talk about more of that. So I'm going to stop
okay,
you here, and then
yeah,
let's take our
okay,
break. And when we come back, we'll talk more about some of these mythological relations to the archetypes. Stay tuned, everybody.
absolutely.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Om Times. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Om Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Om Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Om Times Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free, ascendinghearts.com.
Hi, I'm Melissa Caprio from Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave. Do you believe in magic? What if I told you all you had to do was get a little creative and work a dream spell to bring anything you can imagine into your life? Well, guess what? I've got the spell for you. Postcards to the Universe, a global movement for manifestation, is a casting magical tool for you to use whenever you want. How does living in passion sound to you? Join me in my movement where you get to create in the magical playground. Let's think outside the box and do some playful conjuring. By casting out our desires with a manifesting postcard, we explore our hearts and allow the alchemy of our dreams to appear. And don't forget to tune in each week here on Om Times Radio with my show, Postcards to the Universe, creating the life you crave at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I share tips on creativity, abundance, and prosperity, and you will be introduced to the coolest guests, trailblazers, mystics, and creatives who enrich our lives. Hey, everybody, and welcome back. If you're just joining me, I have mythologist, storyteller Allison Stieger on, and we were talking about archetypes and in their relation to mythological characters. So we mentioned briefly, we're not going to get into him because I don't want to do that, but that Donald Trump is the trickster. So who is the trickster in the as the mythological character that relates to the trickster in the story?
Well, we have a lot of tricksters, right? And we have them
Okay.
in just about every culture. I think a lot about Coyote, which is a Southwest United States indigenous trickster
Okay.
god. And
Okay.
what is so interesting about many of our tricksters is that they are absolutely scatological. Like all of this stuff that he's accused of with, the sexual stuff and, some of just
Mhm.
this sex and violence stuff. Like, I mean,
Right.
Coyote is a god that cannot resist sticking his penis into things. Excuse me, but it's part of the. I mean,
It's part
the
of
people
the
that love
yes.
him, they love that, right? Like that is part of the appeal
Wow.
because it's meeting this archetypal need for our culture. And I do think that there are some ways that there are a lot of people out there that felt like the federal government was not working for them and they want somebody
Sure.
to come in and smash it. And that's exactly what he's doing. Right. So the
Yeah.
trickster is, like there's too much of this power solidified in the federal government and he's
Right.
just going in there. I mean, he's doing exactly what his archetype suggests it needs to be done. Right. I do it, like
Right.
how I personally
Right.
feel about that. Like that's a different issue.
Right, right, I
But,
know.
right.
You're looking at
Right.
it no, I like the
Yeah.
fact the way you're talking about it because it gives us a
Yeah.
different perspective. So now you're gonna
Yeah.
on the other flip side of that, you have people who have been asleep maybe and
Right.
just taken for
Yeah.
granted our rights and everything.
Hmm.
Now people are rising, right? People are
Yeah.
rising, they're protesting. So what would be that archetype? The rising group of people. What does that
Well, I mean,
look like? Like
how that's going to look is I don't know
mhm,
because I don't know who it's going to be, right? So
sure.
we've got people that are I believe going to rise up. Maybe, we've got Bernie Sanders speaking out on the
But
left. We've
not
got
anybody
see,
specifically.
yeah.
I just
Well,
mean
yeah.
like
Well,
the
that's the thing is
energy of the people. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead.
so the people in general, that's a little bit different. Like I do
Okay.
think that archetypes kind of accrue around individual people. So we'll have
Okay.
someone, there will be someone that will rise to this moment, but
Got
since we
it.
don't know who that is yet, like I can give that analysis after they start to bubble up in culture. And
Sure.
and I do this often, right? Like I'll see some kind of story that happens. Like I was looking
Yeah.
at this woman recently, Giselle Pellicot, this big case in France, and her husband
Okay.
was abusive to her, and they
I
and
heard that
she's
story. I
yeah, it's a
heard that's
terrible
it.
story.
Oh my God. What he did to her over the
Yeah.
years. Oh my
Oh my God.
God. Yeah. Yeah. It was terrible.
But what's
Yeah.
what's so fascinating about it is that
Mhm.
because we got to talk about this too, the archetype of the hero, and
Yes.
she embodied that so beautifully because not because of what happened to her, but how she responded to it. She didn't
Right.
say, I want to be anonymous. She didn't say, I want to pretend like this never happened to me and move on with my life. She said, no, I want to put
Right.
the shame where it belongs on the people that did this to me. The shame is not
Right.
mine. It goes with the people that
Yes.
did this. And she was kind of being pushed toward, you should feel ashamed of all this, that all this happened to you. And
Mhm.
she absolutely refused to do that because she
Right.
wanted to be the voice for other women that were going through something similar. So they would say, I don't have to be afraid. I can step into my own bravery. I can actually push back against this. She was showing them archetypally what to do. And there were many, many cases of women that said, it inspired me to
Mm,
leave my own abusive husband or leave my
right.
situation, to find that courage. And this is also what an archetype can do, right? I love this aspect of it.
Mhm.
So so being a human being, we are fragile, we are
Mhm.
vulnerable, it is scary, it
Right.
is hard. There are so many things about it that are difficult. But what archetypes have to offer us, if we need it, it's got a big, powerful energy. It's basically everything about whatever that
Mhm.
is that has ever existed in human history. So if you need to be brave, you can
Mhm.
actually intentionally borrow the hero archetype. You can say, I
Right.
need this for a little while. I'm going to step into
Mm.
this. I have to do something really scary. So I have this little manifestation kind of like ritual that I do with people where we
Mhm.
pull the energy of the archetype onto ourselves, whatever one is needed. And
I
then we
like that.
go and we do the scary thing. And then what we
I'm
can
gonna
also do
borrow that.
afterward, yeah, you
I'm
should
gonna
do it
borrow that
because
from you.
oh, you
Go
should
ahead.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so effective because what you can do is you can not have to
Okay.
feel like, I mean, being owning the word hero is hard.
Mhm.
And this is why
Yes,
in the title of my book it doesn't say hero's journey, which is I think the phrase, if you know that idea, you
I
know
do
that
know
phrase
it. Yeah.
heroes.
Mhm.
And but the
Mhm.
problem that I see with it is that it forces you to identify your own personal self as a hero. And I think that's a
Right.
little bit much to ask for people sometimes. So what we do is we say, I'm going to choose in this moment to be heroic. I don't have to
Mm.
be a hero. I can make a choice right now to be heroic. And what that allows you to do is, again, like you borrow it, right? You just say, okay, I'm going to like you're pulling on a cloak or something, or you're putting on
Mhm.
your armor, and you go in and you have the scary conversation, or you talk to your boss, or you talk to your doctor, or whatever you need to do that's really hard, or you navigate something that's been intimidating to you. And then when you're
Mhm.
done, you let it go. You thank it you show all the gratitude to it, and you release it. And then
Right.
you don't have to feel the heavy weight of the hero archetype on you every second. It doesn't have to be forever. It can just be
Right.
what you need for now, okay? So that is, it's not just a hero, right? You can see that in any part of your life. Like, okay,
Mhm.
I have a friend and he needs, or she needs that mother archetype for now, and I'm going to really come in and
Right.
I'm going to nurture her and I'm going to take care of her and I'm going to fill her energetically with the power of the mother archetype because she is hurting and she needs that from me right now. Maybe she's sick and I'm going to go take care of her. And then you
Mhm.
don't have to be that for her forever. You can let it go when you walk out. But you've had the advantage of getting to borrow this huge amount of archetypal energy, but it's too much weight on a person all the
Mhm.
time. And I think this
Right.
is why you see celebrities cracking up a little bit sometimes because, like we see a lot
Right.
of problems with addiction and, look at
Yeah.
Donald Trump. I mean, you
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah.
He's cracking under the weight of it.
Yeah,
And,
look at
we see this a
Elon
lot.
Musk. He's
Right,
cracking.
right.
And then
Yeah, oh
remember
my
what
gosh.
happened to Britney Spears? I mean, she
Yeah,
had it. I
yeah.
mean,
I
she
mean,
got it so young that it was
yeah.
too much to handle. Yeah, I can
Well, and
see
this is
that
it,
how.
right? Like you get all of these
Mhm.
expectations put on you by the culture. And
Mhm.
the beauty of I wish I could tell more celebrities about this. Like, okay, here's what you have to do. Recognize what archetype you are creating and holding for culture because I do believe it's not this static thing. It's not just you are this
Right.
thing. The
Right.
Artemis that Taylor Swift is not the same Artemis that the Greeks had. We
Of
need a
course.
different
Right.
version of that energetic space in our culture, and she's filling it in a different way. Donald Trump is not the same kind of trickster as Coyote was for the people of
Right.
the southwestern United States, right? So it meets the needs of the culture, and that's why they rise
Mhm.
up.
Right.
But and this has helped me too, right? Like if you are on the internet at all, if you have any kind of public
Yes.
voice where you're sharing what you're doing, obviously with your podcast, there are going to be
Mhm.
people that absolutely adore you and
Of
tell you how
course.
amazing you are and how much you
Mhm.
changed their lives, and that's a really heady
Mhm.
feeling, but it's also really
Yeah.
dangerous. But also,
Yes.
you're going to have people that are talking shit to you all the time. Excuse me.
Yeah.
They're going to be
Yeah. No,
talking
you
like
can curse.
trolling
It's
you.
okay.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You can curse on
Sweet.
here. It's fine.
Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're trolling you or telling you any
Of
kind of horrible
course.
things,
Of
both
course.
that adoration and that vitriol that you're getting belongs to
Yes.
the archetype. That is not you. And if you don't
Right.
identify it with your own personal ego that's on the inside of your body, then it
Yes.
creates a lot of space between you and that, and it creates
Mhm.
safety. So it's now moved
Yes.
away from you. And when hopefully we'll get a chance to get back to the more mythology side of things, but this is what looking at our lives mythically also allows us to do to say, okay,
Mhm.
if I look at my life as if it was a myth and I look at the story and the web and flow of my life, the ebb and flow, excuse
Mhm.
me, then if we put it away from us a little bit, it gives us a new perspective on our own story. And we can say things like, you know what, my mom always told me that I was clumsy and a bad athlete, and I kind of incorporated that into myself, but maybe that is not serving me anymore. Maybe that is not true.
Right.
Maybe I can, in fact, go and be a sporty person, or maybe I am smart, or maybe I am, we all heard this stuff from our parents. Our parents tell us who we
Sure.
are, and we get to
Right.
decide later if we are that or not. That is not the
Yeah, we
final
take
word.
on right, we
Right?
take the story on. That's the thing. We take on
Yeah.
that story and then we live our life from that story, which is kind of what you're saying. And you're saying, well, if
Mhm.
you're living that life from your story, like I'm not good enough. Like, right, I have
Yeah.
that. I'm not good enough. What would
Yeah.
the archetype be of no low self worth and I'm not good enough? What would that be? A
Well, I mean,
victim? Would
I
that
think
be the victim
I mean, it is,
or
but I mean, it's a combination of a lot of things, right? We have these nouns that we
okay.
use to describe human behavior. So you can say victim,
Right.
you can say child. I mean, if you're holding
Okay.
on to the
Okay.
child for too long, I mean, this is why I mentioned the child
Right.
before. If you're holding on
Right.
for too long, what you're doing is you're ceding power to your parents to say who you are.
Right.
And if you
Right.
recognize that, like, okay, I don't have to still be that child that I was when my parents split up or when my mom told me that I
Mhm.
was worthless or whatever, the power of this work is really in shifting our perceptions about who we are and where we want to be. So it affects our past, it affects our present, and it affects our future because what it does is it allows us to step into that archetypal power, but also release it when we're done with it, to step into a
Okay.
new understanding of our story, to cast it in a new way. I mean, when witches and people talk about casting spells, I mean, that's what we're
Mhm.
doing is we're shifting energy, right? We're saying, okay, I'm going to make a change here and I'm going to pull, there's all this energy surrounding us, right? So if we understand this and start to
Yeah.
get a greater sensitivity to how it flows around us, then we can start to move through it with a little bit more effective power. So this is what this
Mm.
does, is it's just, we've got so many thousands of years of examples of this, and they're all in our myths. And once we
Well,
know how
that's
to take that message
yeah.
in, then it teaches us what we need to do and a
Yeah,
better
that's
way to
really
live.
interesting. It's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Yeah.
Like, so if somebody comes to you and just says, "I feel beat up. I feel weak. I don't feel strong." And then
Mhm.
is it that when you start to work with them, do you offer them a story in mythology so that they can borrow, say,
Yeah.
the archetypal energy of a character of strength, let's say?
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
is
So
that how you
this
do
is
it? Okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
usually what I do when I'm coaching someone or I'm in a workshop with
Mhm.
someone or on retreat, so I will usually, because I have this vast repository of myths in my head and I got to do something with them, I got
Okay.
to get them out of there. So I go like,
Yeah.
like I'll go and I'll like talk to people, right, and say, okay, so we're going to
Yeah.
work with one of my favorite
Mhm.
ones is the story of Ariadne from Greek mythology because it's
Okay.
such a powerful exemplar of the path of women through our modern culture. Because what happens in that story, and there's a lot going on with it. She's the sister of the Minotaur. She's the daughter of King Minos of Crete. But what she does
Okay.
is she helps the Greek hero Theseus defeat the Minotaur. She leaves with him. She falls in love with him, and they're going to leave together. And he's going to take her back to Athens and meet a queen. But he abandons
Uh-huh.
her on the island Naxos, just leaves her on the beach asleep, and sails off without her. Now,
Wow.
the way that I see that is mimicking women's lives is I have never,
Mhm.
maybe once or twice in my life, in all those years of this work, have I met a woman that did not have a relationship with someone when they were young where they gave all their power into that person. Young women are
Mhm.
taught to be nice and to be supportive and to be the
Guilty.
helpmeet and all this stuff.
Guilty.
And
Guilty.
so yeah, right, right. We all know what that
Yes.
feels like. I mean, maybe
Right.
you dated that guy for 6 months, or
Mhm.
maybe you were married to him for
Right.
20 years, and you helped him get through
Right.
medical school, or you helped him get through law school, or you helped him build a
Yep.
company, or whatever. And then here you are, and it's 20 years on, and now the marriage is over, and you don't know what to
Mhm.
do. That is the moment that Ariadne is on the beach. And what is so
Mm.
fantastic about it is the next part of the story is where it starts to get really good because what happens to her next is that she meets the god Dionysus. He marries her and he becomes the only one of the Greek pantheon who stays loyal to his wife. The only one.
Wow.
And then when she finally
Wow.
dies, they put her up into the heavens as a constellation, which is the highest honor that could be afforded to a human being.
Yeah.
So, what does Dionysus represent here? Dionysus is the god of ecstasy, the ecstatic experience, kind of a reaching toward the spiritual in life. So, when
Mm.
we come out of that, we've had that Theseus relationship. We've had that guy that we were pouring all of our powerful feminine energy into to try to help him like get a clue. Then
Right.
now that relationship is over, it feels like a really dark and hard time. But we've got this beautiful myth that says there is something so much more powerful on the other side of this experience for you.
Right.
And to recognize that, where Dionysus is holding space in your own life, where that archetype is holding space, really can help us not only find a sense of power again and hopefulness about our future
Mhm.
and what that means. The followers of Dionysus were called Maenads, and they were
Mhm.
women. They were often women, even in midlife, or just that had the household experience for a while and wanted to step away from it. And they kind of went crazy. I mean, they were like running around the
Yeah.
forest, dismembering animals and drinking wine. Like there's so much power in it. And it really does help to
Wow.
understand that we do not have to go out and become
Right.
alcoholics and pull
Right.
animals limb from limb. It's metaphorical, right? Myths are
It's
metaphor. So
metaphorical. Right.
we have to understand the power of that, right? Like this is what does the ecstatic experience represent to you, and how can you pull that into your own life after you've done all of this, after you've found your way through all of the expectations that are put on women when we're young to do all of these things, and now you're cast adrift a little bit, but there's so much power in the thing that comes after. And this is what myths can do, right? Like this is one example out of thousands
Yeah.
and thousands of stories that lasted because they have something to still offer us, right? So we can say, okay, what do I need to know from the story of Ariadne? What do I need to know from the story of Medea? What do I need to know from the story of Freya? Or anywhere. And I really do try to like
Yeah.
help people. Sometimes people want stories from their own cultures, where their families come from. Sometimes they go completely in
Sure.
a different direction. Like whatever it is, we can work together to find the one that's going to really resonate. And then you start to pull the archetypal energy of that story into yourself. And now you're in a real sense of power, right? Now we feel like we have control over our situations. Now we know how to write our new narrative to go forward into our lives. That
Oh
is
my
what myths
God.
have to offer us.
Fascinating. I love this. I can't wait till your book comes out. I'm going to be like, oh my God, this is so fascinating to my brain, the way I think. So, can you share like somebody you worked with and how the narrative of their life was changed through the mythology? Like, as how someone's path was, transformed, if you wouldn't
Well, yeah,
mind.
I mean, I want to be careful because I do
Yeah,
tinker a lot with
not
this. Thing.
giving
I'm not going to name
anybody's
any names or anything.
no.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no,
So,
no,
so I,
without giving
I,
details of who
yeah.
you're speaking about, right,
Yeah, so
obviously.
I work with different kinds of populations. Often I do see women in midlife that are going through something like this. It's often either a divorce or
Yeah.
a diagnosis of some kind, right? You get breast cancer,
Mhm.
or there's
Yeah.
something. Now this, if you don't mind, I'm going to call back to something that we kind of skipped over a little bit earlier in
Sure.
our conversation,
Go
which
ahead.
is to
Yeah.
understand what the heroic journey is and why it
Mhm.
matters, right? So we
Okay.
have multiple moments in our lives where we die to an old version of ourselves and we're reborn into a
Yes.
new version. And it can happen in really profound ways. It can happen in really small ways
Sure.
where there was a version of you that existed. Like you had a job and then now you don't.
Yeah.
Or you, as far as you knew, were a healthy person and then now you've heard that you have cancer, or your spouse
Right.
says that they want a divorce. There's a lot of ways that happens, right? Like,
Yes.
and the first really profound one that happens to everyone is going through puberty. So I
Yep.
actually deal with kids at that age too, right? So like, okay, you were a child and now this weird thing is happening to you and now you're not anymore. And what does that mean? How do we navigate that? Now, a lot of people, their first instinct is to hunker down and survive it. That's all they want to do. They want to just get through it, put one foot in front of the other, just take the next steps and hope that it gets better someday. Now, that's fine. And a lot of people do that. I think most people do. But what myths have to offer us is they show us something deeper and more profound that we can have happen. And this is to me, the most sacred opportunity and duty that we have as human beings, which is to say, okay, I recognize that I'm going to have to go on this journey. And this is what it looks like. And Campbell did a really good job of kind of encapsulating this, doing the kind of the beginning of that, right? And people like me are pushing this work forward. So we say, okay, you are being
Mhm.
called to an adventure and you're going to refuse it. And that's the first time when my book's called Unstuck, because we get stuck there. We say, I don't
Sure.
want to do it. I know I don't want to have that
Yeah.
conversation. I don't want to hear about it. I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm
Mhm.
not going to, I'm going to say, no, no, no. And sometimes that's a moment of hesitation inside someone's mind. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's 20 years of denial, right? I mean, we go the whole
Yes.
swath. And then what happens next is eventually you will step into it, because usually you don't have a choice, and you're going to go down, you're going to leave your world behind that you knew before. Everything you knew before is going to change. You're going to go
Mhm.
into another space. And there are going to be allies there for you. There are going to be mentors there for you. There are going to be villains that you have to defeat, monsters,
Sure.
temptations away from the path. All these things happen. And we have these stories over and over and over again, right? Where they say, okay, this is going to happen next. And it does. It really does. So we go through all of that. We get down to the bottom, and you have a moment where you have this kind of confrontation with the monster or the dragon, say. So if you imagine it as a
Mhm.
dragon, you're going to defeat that
Mhm.
somehow. And it doesn't have to be a death. It can be just, figuring out of something that you need to know. And
Right.
you're going to pull back out of that experience a treasure. And if you imagine like a dragon being sitting on a hoard, right? So you have this
Okay.
hoard. Okay, now you defeated the dragon, and the hoard is yours. So what that is whatever art you're going to create, or that is whatever wisdom you've gained out of the situation, or whatever. And then you're going to make your way back out. And the purpose of that second half of the journey is to prepare you to not necessarily be the center of the story anymore, not to have to hold that heroic role, but to be prepared to take what you've gained out of that experience back to your community. The beginning half of the journey is very much an individualistic kind of American style. I'm going to go and do this thing. But then later, what we get to do is we get to bring that back and help somebody else with it. So what we have
Mm.
is this beautiful continuity of human experience where you are helped by your ancestors in the form of myths, in the form of novels, in the form of art, in the form of conversations, in the form of recipes, in the form of anything that you've had that's been given to you by another human that's helped you out in some way. And this shows up in a lot of ways. Okay, so you have all these things and they've prepared you, every book you've ever read, whatever. So these things have
Right.
helped you get to be the person that you are. Now you've got this thing that you've found in this journey that you've been on that was really, really hard. This is where transformation happens. So now
Mhm.
you have this thing and you're going to take it back out into the world, but you're going to get stuck here too, because this is what we call the refusal or the return. This is when you
Okay.
can't move on from your divorce, or you still feel like you're dead
Mm.
or dying, even though they gave you the all clear on the cancer, or when you just cannot, you're so used to being down in the world of the dead that you don't want to have to make the adjustment to get back to where you were, because you just, you can survive this. You know what to do. Like, okay, I can handle
Right.
this. I'm not dating, but it doesn't matter because it's fine. I'm not really lonely. I'm just going to be here. It's okay. That's the refusal to return. And the danger of that place is that if you hold on to the hoard for too long, then you become the dragon yourself. Okay. So we have to take that step out. And again, myths show us what to do every step of the way. And now, when we've finally been able to step forward out of that place of being stuck, and I see people stuck here a lot, right?
Sure.
Once we're
Yeah.
able to do that, then now we have something to share. Now we're going to be able to go, okay, I am ready to share this on in whatever way that I can, have these conversations, create this art, make a new app, create a new company. I mean, it can be any number of things. It doesn't have to be,
anything.
yeah,
Right.
anything that didn't exist before, right? So you have something that you've learned and you want to share it with somebody else. And I do think that this is a really sacred and true human impulse. Like, if you know somebody that needs something and you have the answer, it is a really compelling thing to want to share it with them, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
we want to give advice, right? Like, we want to tell people,
Right.
you got to do this. Like, if you ever met
Yeah.
anybody that just went vegan, they will tell you all about why it's so great to be vegan. I mean, we all know what
Yeah.
that sounds like, right? Or
Right.
they just got a new trainer, or they get a new workout program. Like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. Like, that impulse to share it, that is part of this experience, right? So let's harness that.
Yes.
Let's take that. Let's take everything that we went through that was so hard. We're going to take it and we're going to share it on. We're going to prepare ourselves to do
Wow.
that. And now what you are is you have become the ancestor that you needed before. So you benefit from the work of the ancestors. You have help by your peers and people around you when you're in the middle of it, in the present. And then as you come out, now what you're doing is helping the next person when they have to go through it. And now we have this beautiful continuity of human experience running down through generations, because people who are willing to do this and step into this role and step into that archetype now have something that they can share on. And then somebody's going to take that from you, from your conversation or your book that you wrote or whatever that you did.
Right.
And that's given them a tool now to navigate what they have to do. And then they do the same thing for somebody else down the road. So to me, I find that really beautiful,
Wow.
because it's not just
I
about all the
find
ways
it
that we've been hurt.
I find it really beautiful too, because seriously, I did that without knowing that I was doing that, because I was in a
Yeah.
really bad space after my divorce. I had a
Mhm.
whole different job, a whole different life. It wasn't just the
Yeah.
divorce. Everything changed. And it was my, I guess, my, my tower moment, if we're talking about the tarot, like everything
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
crumbled. And that's what happened. I went into the just get through the day, and then went deep
Mhm.
inside. And actually what book really helped me while I was going through that was Women Who Run with the Wolves,
Yeah.
the stories of the wild women archetype. That
Yes.
book, what it just spoke to me so deeply. So, and now that you're saying that, and now here I am, and I have you on my show. So there you go.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just
I mean,
shortened it.
yeah.
It
Well, I
was
mean,
a long
that
road,
was
but
one of
I
the things for
shortened
me,
it.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
that book came to me when I was in my early 30s, and it was one of those ancestor moments for me. That was something that I
Yeah.
needed to get. Like, it
Mhm.
was all those stories that I heard as a child, and it was every book I ever read, and it was reading, Clarissa Pinkola Estes and Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and all of that.
Mhm.
And this is the other thing that I tell people too, because they're so afraid to step into the power of the archetype, and they're so afraid to express
Mhm.
themselves creatively, because I'm never going to be Shakespeare, or I'm never going to be
Right.
Da Vinci or
Right.
whatever. But you are the only constellation of attributes and experiences that has ever existed on this planet. Even if you can be
Right.
not an identical twin, you can be a conjoined twin. It doesn't even
Right.
matter. You're going to have a different experience from your sibling,
Of
because you've
course.
had different thoughts, you've read different books, you've had all the influences that have come in have been different. So you have something unique to offer in the history of the world. And if you
Absolutely.
don't share that on somehow, then all of the rest of us are poorer for it. So if
Oh
we
my
can find
God.
our way through this journey, we have
Mhm.
done something sacred. We
Oh my
have
God.
been able to help not
We
only,
could we could talk for hours, but I want to make sure I get you to share
yeah,
with people, because we only have like a minute
yeah,
or so,
yeah, okay.
how people can work with you if they want, or they want to know more about
Mhm.
take a workshop or what you do. So I want to give you some time to share that with us. Go ahead.
Well, again, I would say to anybody, go to mythicstories.com. You mentioned it at the beginning of our hour. And you can find me there. You can find me on social media just by Googling my name or Googling the phrase Mythic Stories. You will find me easily. You can sign up for 30 minutes of free conversation with me where I can kind of try to guide. I will give you as much as I got in 30 minutes about your particular situation, and I will do it for free. So, and it's
Wow.
just a way to find when it's time for me to work with someone one-on-one, to make that, even if it doesn't work out that way, I'm happy to do that for people. I love having these conversations. I love helping. I mean, this is my sacred duty, right? This is how
Yeah,
I
you
get to
can
do
tell.
this. And
Yeah.
it's a passionate thing for me. So don't feel afraid to do that. I'm delighted. Every person that's listening, I am delighted to talk to you, and I cannot wait to meet you. So come and find me.
Oh my God. No, you can tell. You can just hear it in your voice. I mean, you are so passionate about it, and it's really, really fascinating. And I believe that anybody who's listening, you should really reach out to her because she's going to have a lot to offer you on things maybe you don't understand about the story
Yeah.
you've been living and you've been telling yourself that maybe you can get a different insight, right? I just
Yeah.
think that's just so amazing. Oh my God. It's just like, yeah, I think I want to have a one-on-one.
Okay. Well, go and sign up. It's really easy. Go to my
I think I
website.
gotta have. I think I gotta have. So yeah, definitely check her out. Mythicstories.com. I mean, Allison, it's just been such a pleasure having you. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. I gotta have you back because there's so much more we could talk about. All right,
Absolutely.
everybody.
All
Thank
right.
you
Thanks.
so much for listening to
You're
Postcards
very
to the
welcome.
Universe with Melissa, creating the life you crave, and wishing everyone a wonderful week filled with joy, abundance, and love. Peace.